Are we holding? I'm holding.
Why don't you do a little dance over there? We are dance.
Yeah. We're good? Alright. Hey guys, what's up? I'm Brett.
And I'm Noah.
And we have a production company called LA Reels. We specialize in short form narrative content. We've been going for the last almost 3 years in February now. We've created about 1,000 plus narrative scenes for actors and producers. And
Right, we specialize in that short form narrative content, and it's all kind of standalone scenes that our clients will come in and have us produce something, and they have maybe a discombobulated vision, they don't quite know what they want, and they come to us and we break that down for them and turn that into a story they can walk away with.
great storytelling. And besides that, you know, we've done numerous music videos, short films. We're currently in post-production on our first feature film, which has been a 3-year process and been absolutely amazing. And we've been in the virtual reality space with our own gear for about 4 months now. We did hear about virtual reality about 2 years ago at the Directors Guild I know they had mentioned Defrost, which is created by Randall Kleiser. And he's the one who kind of mentored us into virtual reality. But he's creating the virtual reality series Defrost right now, which is actually going to like the new media area in Sundance. So he's on the frontier with that. I mean, these guys are on the frontier, and kind of everyone in this room right now is very much on the frontier of virtual reality. We need to do another thing or the other thing.
You got the thing.
Okay. So I mean, the reality is right now. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're in a new age of storytelling, and it's so exciting to have this new tool in the filmmakers and the storytellers tool belt, virtual reality, where we can fully immerse our audience, and you all know that, that's why you're here. But it's changing the game in so many ways because we're able to actually bring our audience to a place almost like they're teleporting there. And we haven't been able to do this ever, and it's just such a cool experience to be involved in this, and at the same time, it's introducing a lot of new challenges, and we're figuring out how to use this tool.
And not just us, but everybody. I mean, even, you know, you have the main players like Nokia. I mean, they're still figuring out how to have create good narrative content, and like everyone keeps repeating, we recently were also at the unveiling of the Ozone. And reality is, you know, we looked at it, once they said $60,000, we kind of lost all interest because the content that they're creating is almost on the same level of the content that we're creating on our GoPro rig. Right now we're running with a 7-camera GoPro rig, and then we also have our Theta right there. But the reality is, where we are right now is everyone's trying to figure out the best, how to make the best storytelling elements. And we're specifically going to talk to you about narrative filmmaking. Before we step into that, I just want to kind of go over just some specs with why it is great to get into VR right now. One, it's a very unsaturated market, especially for great content. So you guys right now getting into it, it's very smart. I mean, you have big guys like Facebook investing $2 billion into VR and Oculus. You know, you have Microsoft, you have Vive, you have all these other VR companies, and there's a lot going into it and a lot of heavy hitters. And they're all kind of seeking the same thing, and that's what we're kind of all doing, is creating great content, especially narrative content, and that's what we're going to touch on.
Right, and I think there's also a huge budget out there. A lot of the major companies are allocating like funds to this, even though they don't exactly know what their role is going to be yet. But funds are out there to tell these stories, so let's dive into it.
Yeah. So now, us as storytellers and filmmakers, we've gone from cave paintings on the wall to live theater, and then of course the moving picture, which now we're enhancing the moving picture, and we're bringing it into basically living and being totally immersed in the entire world of it all. So really, what do all these great media contents have in common? One, it always falls down to your story, your script. You know, anything that's worthwhile, worth the replay, or worth watching has always started with a phenomenal story and script.
Right, so what makes a good story? It's really something that can engage your audience, hold their attention, and make them feel as if they're invested in knowing what the outcome is going to be. I mean, that's in a nutshell.
so we have with the thousand plus narrative scenes that we produce for our clients, we've created our own system, and maybe you guys can take whatever you want to take away from this, but we've kind of created our own consultation, our own system on to quickly create and categorize our narrative storytelling so we can simplify it for ourselves.
Right. We don't have a lot of our clients don't have the luxury of having like 2 years to really get in there and perfect a script, to go work with maybe a focus group to find out what the best way to tell the story is going to be. So our clients come to us and they've got a very vague idea, or something like, I want to tell a good drama. And then we have to take their very vague idea and we put it through a series of filters. We have 7 questions that we use to really just get what their vision is, and we break that down. And it's something that we've created that really just kind of lets us have a concrete idea of what this vision is going to be and how we're going to tell it. So let's dive into these 7 questions. The first question we ask is, what is the genre?
And I mean, you can think about that as, we have everything up there: action, horror, comedy, drama, science fiction, fantasy. It goes on. But really, knowing that to start really just gives you the world and gives you the idea. And going from that, where can we find our inspiration? What is our setting?
Right. And 'cause a lot of times you can look at existing media and really pull from them at some ideas about what the tone of the piece is going to be. Like if you're doing a political series, you can look at House of Cards for how they set up something, or existing shows. If you're doing a fantasy, you might want to go with
Game of Thrones, and especially because we're filmmakers, and VR, we're filmmakers. And so it's a collaborative art form. No matter what art form you are in it, from the writing to the production to the post-production to the pre-production to everything, it's all collaborative. So when you're storytelling and when you're creating story together, if you have an idea that you're both on the same page with and relating to immediately, you can bounce things off of each other and already be thinking in the same world.
Right. Don't forget to look at existing media that's out there that's doing stuff right. Look at the examples of the classics to find storytelling ideas that you can use as a launching pad, as an inspiration to fit within your story.
So the next important thing, obviously, once we get the inspiration and the idea and the genre, who are characters? Who are we following in the story? What points and who are these people? Why are they important to us?
Right. This is going to really help you identify the people in your story and make sure that you don't get lost, and you can start to sort of have a clear identification with the people that are in this world that you're creating.
And at this point too, throughout your entire writing and creation process, you may have characters that appear, as you write and as you grow. But who are your main people right now? And when writing and when creating, throw everything on the wall. Just throw it all out there. That you can't put any bad ideas out there. It's better to get something out than to hold it in and forget about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Next thing we're going to ask is, what's the scenario? What's the setting? Where is this taking place? Is it a zombie apocalypse and people are coming out from the grave to eat us? Is it
video game high school? Yeah. Is it in a classroom setting?
Right.
So really, and you can kind of do this per scene, or if you're starting with an idea, you can kind of do this for one place at a time. And this entire sequence, it doesn't, it's not going to overcome your entire, if you're writing a feature film, your entire feature film, but you can do it in pieces, and this is kind of just to help you create those pieces.
Just going back to that, for the setting and scenario, I think that's actually really critical in the VR world, because the location has such a dynamic impact in the viewer's experience, because you're basically teleporting to a place. So really take some time to think about where you're going to tell your story.
Yeah, and strategically, when you're thinking on location, especially in the VR world, and when you're thinking about all these elements as a VR filmmaker, think about them, as Vanishing Media was saying, really think about when you write your media and create it, really think about the format that you're portraying it in. So scenario-wise, you can either pick a beautiful location, something visually stunning for our viewers in VR, or something strategic that works for the action that's happening in the scenario or our characters.
Right. All right. So next thing we're gonna ask, this is when we start to really get into like the story, right? So what are the intentions of the characters? You know, some good intentions might be something like, you know, the bum is trying to get food for his next meal. What else?
Yeah, you know, that guy wants to, you want to ask that cute girl out. Or
Yeah.
maybe that cute guy out.
Yeah, someone's trying to get laid.
But really, what do our characters want?
Right.
You like that?
Does it
What do our characters want? I mean, you know, really, what are they going after? And thinking about that too, you know, in our space, like no matter if we're filming, if we're on stage, if we're on camera, if we're in VR, you know, all these things are always coming into play, no matter what, to make a great story. So really, what are our intentions? Now, the characters may or may not get their intentions or obtain their intentions, but they have a goal to reach, and this is going to help with the creation process.
Right, and that goes into the next thing. What are the stakes and the consequences? So say that Johnny doesn't kill the evil cyborg, which is his intention. You know what's going to happen if the bum doesn't get a sandwich? What's going to happen? Or if Alex does go out and he gets a date, what happens? So you know, have some stakes and have some weight to these too, because if you're going to have something in your story and it just doesn't really have stakes, the viewer's going to be like, oh, that was okay.
It's not going to matter.
Right.
It's not going to matter. And you know, there's nothing different in the virtual reality narrative space than in the feature film or series or episodic space on current media. You know, that is going to draw in or not draw in terms of story.
Like if you're talking about like then that catatonic thing where you're going through this insane asylum, like those are some heavy stakes. You feel like you're going to get killed any second, and you got these like scary guys walking around. I mean, that's some stakes right there. So,
Right.
Cool.
And finally, of course, you always want to know what your end goal is. You know, when you're creating and writing, this way you have a start point and you have your end point, and you can start filling in everything in the middle.
And don't tease yourself by just having all this great trailer type language. Make sure that you know what happens. As a storyteller, don't forget to tell yourself what the end is. A lot of times people do get stuck on the middle of the story and they don't ever wrap things up. Make sure that you have a very clear idea of what the final is going to be, because then you have somewhere to go. And your audience is going to know what happens at the end. They're going to feel resolved.
And you guys are here right now for virtual reality, you know, lessons and lessons in VR. But I think one thing to not forget is your story. It's always gonna be so important, and to have people coming back, to have people staying interested. You know, you always want to have a clear central message. And this, what we do for this. For us, it's been a system that we've developed to really kind of inspire off of each other, and we can do it very quickly, and also with other people in the room, where we go over these elements and we can just shoot, and then blue sky, everything just comes out.
Right, we get these raw nuggets of information. Cool. Now we've got all these answers to these 7 questions. We've got what's happening, who the people are, what's the ending is like, and then we're going to filter all of that information into the script. The script is basically your playbook for the entire team, from your edit, from your actors to your director, your camera op. Everybody's going to use that script as their sort of Bible to make sure that your vision as a filmmaker gets translated to the final piece. But with that, when you're working on a script, I think something that's very important to really clarify all of that brain vomit that we got from our little breakdown, those 7 questions we filtered through. Now we know what the story is about, now we know who the characters are. It's really important to simplify that to 3 core sentences that you can go back to if ever you get lost, to make sure that you're not adding unnecessary information, to make sure that you don't go off of the trail.
And this is not your log line. This is not how you sell your project or your media. This is for you and for your direction of your piece.
Right. And I think really the great way to think about it is like the tree trunk in a tree, or like the spine on your body. And from there, you can start working your way out. So if you really get it to clear 3 sentences, you know, okay, we'll go with the guy that's trying to get a date, right? So boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy finds a new girl, whatever. So you have those 3 sentences, and you know, okay, cool. So this is what Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 is, right? And you can have the 3 sentences for your entire piece. You can break it up for each scene in the thing. But knowing something in a simple, easily digestible thing that you can repeat to your actors if ever you get lost is a great way to go.
And with those 3 core sentences, you can keep breaking down your bits and pieces into your next scene or your previous scene or what happens later, and you can keep arranging and changing placement of your story.
Right.
Now, speaking of story, speaking of virtual reality, we really have an option of breaking the fourth wall. What is breaking the fourth wall? Have any of you ever seen Ferris Bueller's Day Off? When he breaks from the camera, from the TV screen and talks directly to the audience. Now, with us, when writing your media, when writing your content, I think you have that option to play with as well. You know, do you want to break the fourth wall?
Right. And like previously in traditional filmmaking, it's like basically been taboo. Like if you pull it off, it's like, ooh, you actually pulled it off. That's great, good job. But like in VR, I think it opens up this whole new potential.
And there are no rules.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many best practices. There's things that are out there to sort of help us make sure that we don't, leave a bad experience. But in the end, we are out here. We're experimenting. We're having fun, and I think it's up to us to go out there and test those limits and see what's working, what's not going to work, and breaking the fourth wall, having your audience be a member of the story, that first person or third person. It's a choice that it's up to you. And I think it's really important to know that before you dive into your script, and to know sort of that both routes are going to have their limitations. And like we were talking about earlier, if you've got your camera moving up and down, I mean, it provides this whole different realm. You can have a very passive onlooker role, or you can be kind of immersed as a character within the story. And
to add on top of that as well, I mean, you don't necessarily always need to know, if you're always going to be in first person or third person. Right. If your viewer is going to be an audience member, an onlooker, a voyeur, or a character in the scene, I mean, the writing and the process may create other options for that. And also, I mean, think about converging both. Where you have an audience member maybe as a third person character in the scene, and then also as an onlooker where it transitions seamlessly. There's different ways to play, and because we're in a new medium, we have all sorts of ways to think about this and start creating. Now, me personally, besides our production career, like I've been an actor and on stage for almost 20 years, and now in film for about 10 years, and filmmaking and live theater are very similar to the VR experience and what we're doing and the content that we are creating right now.
There's elements of both, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and really, I mean, when being a producer of virtual reality and virtual reality content, we really have to think about some elements that come into play as a director, as a producer, as an actor, as a talent in front of the camera, as a director in front or hiding from the camera. I mean, really coming into play now. When once you have your core story, once you have your script, once you have all that, once you do you start your pre-production process. I think with VR, if you're doing heavy narrative, you want to have heavy rehearsal periods. You want to have specific blocking. You want to have specific choreography. And it's very important for an actor. I mean, for actors, this may change your casting type, where instead of casting TV stars or movie people, you may start and going in the theater route, because now you need actors who maybe, they're talking, Vanishing Point had really great points, but they're talking about, actors who, were Emmy-winning TV actors not being able to do a 3-minute scene. But if you go with theater actors, and well rehearsed, you can have actors, on stage performing for 2 hours. Yeah. And for an actor, they're living and breathing in the environment the entire time. And that's also something to think about too, and to tell your actors, because it is such a new medium, is that you will be living and breathing in the environment, so you as an actor never turn off. Yeah. You're constantly acting. If you're not saying dialogue, you're still living in the world. And then also something as you as a director. Now, if you look at the Ozo, it actually has live view, so you can
Before we
wear.
go on that, I just want to kind of mention on the, like, we were talking earlier about using inspiration from other existing mediums, you know, kind of like when we were talking about doing a political thing, we look at House of Cards and how they do it. I think something that's really incredible about, you know, having this influence of theater, influence of filmmaking in this new virtual reality space, is that we can look at how that is done in theater and bring the stuff that works into VR. So like how a rehearsal works for theater, we can use that as inspiration and say, cool, this is how we're going to rehearse our actors. We're going to get actors who can be in the scene for a long time, or we're going to, you know, mix concepts from filmmaking into the VR space. And I think it's about using both of those to kind of find something that's going to combine together and work really well.
And going off of, you know, what Vanishing Point, what they were talking about specifically, about the 12-foot rule or the 3-foot rule, and I don't know if that's a rule yet, but you know, there's something to be said about recording like that. When your characters in VR are too far away, it's hard to find detail. When they're too close, it may mess with the stitch. So I mean, that all goes into your strategic blocking. We found too, while playing on VR, is crossing stitch frames. You know, with crossing our cameras, you know, how many times do you want to cross stitch frames? Because you're going to do way more post-production when you have more movement versus very specific movement, specific timing. You know, and also blocking characters so they're not landing on a stitch frame. You know, so once we get to know our material, once we get to know our cameras, our technology better, and of course technology is going to constantly improve and help these things out. But right now, it's all simple things to be thinking about. And if we know the basis now, you know, when the technology is way more improved, we'll be way ahead of the curve. So, yeah. So to reiterate, actors in the scene, rehearsals, that's blah blah blah. So now, as directors, I mean, you guys need to be very specific, and you guys need to have a very strong vision for your direction in this narrative content.
Right, and there's two ways to kind of go about this right now. It's like, okay, now the Yozo's out, they've got the live feed, you can kind of see what's going on with your actors. As that technology improves, that'll be an easier thing for a director to be outside of the room and monitor what's happening. But until then, you know, it's kind of like, go do some great rehearsal, trust your actors, and go from there.
And actually, going off of what Dylan said before, garbage in, garbage out. You know, your pre-production, your rehearsal time before you even turn on a camera or 7 cameras, you know, is really going to affect what you get on the output.
Yeah.
So really take the time to plan, to do your pre-production. I mean, this is after you get the script, which takes a whole bunch of planning and time and energy and thought and talent. But really, when working with your actors, when working with your team, and then one thing that I forgot to mention before, when you're doing narrative content in VR, you can't have your crew on set, obviously. You know, so lavaliers. Think about laving your main players. Think about heavy ADR. Think about great sound design. And also now, where are you going? So then going into the creating and the production element of it, there's actually tools for directions for the tools to help direct the audience. And Vanishing Point was talking about this too. They're great.
Yeah, and
they're awesome.
We're touching on this a lot. And there's so many ways to kind of work with your viewers to kind of gently guide them to what you want them to see, right? Like darkening a particular spot of the room. You're just going to gently guide someone to look where the light is. And these tools are, you know, they use them in theater. It's like taking what you kind of know already from existing mediums that works and start experimenting with it in VR. But there's so many other ways. Like you can have somebody look a certain direction, and you're going to want to see, hey, what is this person looking at?
I mean, it's automatically going to make a viewer, if you see people in your frame looking, you're automatically going to look there. That's human nature. It's what we do.
Yeah, something though to keep in mind, make sure you're not like overstimulating your audience, because it can be a little distracting if you're like, hey, look over here. Oh, what's that? Hey. And then before you know it, your audience is just going to be like, dude, get this thing off of me.
Right.
So you really want to make sure that you're using it strategically, and the key word there is gently. If they're enjoying this beautiful sunset that you put out there, let them enjoy that. And then, you know, if they choose to kind of go back and go the direction you want, give them a nice little reward.
And that goes, you know, like playing with direction, playing with perspective and where we want the audience to look. I mean, that